welcome everybody to our Shires TV episode tonight. This is a fun and wonderful group of people that we're bringing together to talk about orchestral trombone playing. All of the people on this panel have really pretty interesting and exciting careers through the various paths that led them to playing in the orchestras where they are. It's not just orchestral playing for many of these people. There's also chamber aspects, there's also solo aspects, there's teaching aspects. I saw something, Mark, in your bio about kombucha brewing. So
Yeah.
I think there's
Nice.
a few things that make up all of these like fun careers that can lend themselves into the orchestral world. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about that. We were just saying, obviously, the state of the world is a little bit interesting right now for orchestral musicians, but it's still an inspiring thing, and I think it'd be a lot of fun to pick all your brains about it. So on our panel tonight, super excited to welcome Mark Davidson, who's the principal trombone of the Utah Symphony. He's also an assistant professor at the University of Utah School of Music. We have Vanessa Fralick, who is the second associate principal trombone of the Toronto Symphony, and she's also on faculty at University of Toronto. Harold Van Schaik is bass trombone at the Florida Orchestra. And then we also have Gordon Wolfe, who's principal trombone of the Toronto Symphony with Vanessa. And he's professor of trombone at both Royal Conservatory and University of Toronto. So welcome to all of you guys, and thanks for joining me this Thursday evening. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
I think what we'll do is let each of you tell us a little bit more about yourself and where you came from and your trombone path that led you to playing in the orchestra. And again, just for keeping track, I think we'll just do alphabetical like plans here. So Mark, you would be first. So let's start with you.
Great. Hi. Wow. Before an introduction, I have to say, on the terms that we're here of everything that's going on in the world, I thank you for having me. And it's a very sensitive time for everybody in our business. Everybody's been impacted, whether they play in an orchestra or they're, freelance musicians. So just want to start off and say, thank you. I'm glad that we can meet over this medium, and I hope that we can all get back to, some of the things we were doing that brought us here tonight. So I'm Mark Davidson. I play in the Utah Symphony, principal trombone. I've been here for 7 years, and I also teach at the University of Utah, trombone students, and then I also teach a orchestral practicum course. It's available to all music majors, and it covered a lot of topics that we might talk about tonight. I've really enjoyed that class. It's something I'm really passionate about, teaching and the students here in Utah. Outside of music, we've obviously had some extra time, some free time on our hands, and I've been able to explore the outdoors. Utah is such a beautiful state. If you're watching and you haven't been here, I hope you make a visit if you can. I've really enjoyed road biking. We kind of touched on that today. I heard Joe had an accident. I hope you're okay, Joe, if you're watching. Sorry about that. I went mountain biking today in Park City. It was gorgeous, beautiful. I just love it. It was great. And that's one positive thing I think a time like this has kind of brought. Many of us, maybe myself for sure, is having some extra time to spend more time with those close to you, and then also being able to, do things like yard work and, chores around the house.
All the fun stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So, we resume work on in chamber settings, and brass right now are with the aerosol tests that are happening. It's kind of all in, there's an update every day, but the orchestra, the full orchestra, everybody's going back on payroll, and we're all going, back on August 31st. What that means for us in the brass and winds department, we'll have to see. We have things on the schedule that are exciting, but we'll see if we're able to come back and what capacity. So, and then at the University of Utah, we start on Monday, and I've been able to keep in touch with my students over the summer. Probably get into that later, but what an interesting time for a student during this time. Spending extra time keeping in touch with them. I feel like there's so much more responsibility to each student to carry through with, it's so easy if you're not able to be held accountable by, mentors that, it's just a very unique time. So anyway, we start back on Monday and I'm very excited about that, to be kind of officially, working with them on, their goals and everything. So that in a nutshell,
Nice.
is, I don't see the timer. I hope that
No,
was
dude, you're good.
But,
No timer.
yeah. So, yeah.
That's awesome, Mark. Thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, it's starting back up on Monday. It's a little crazy, but they're lucky to have you there. So I'm sure the students are looking forward to getting back to you.
Oh yeah, I wanted to mention one thing. We've had our personal project, the personal project. Everybody, has their own projects, recording or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks in the orchestra, we've had these, videos to stay relevant to our community. And I've been working on this project. I'm really excited about it. It's for Black Lives Matter, and it's this commission piece that was written, and I've been working nonstop over the past 6 weeks, almost, for it. It should be released hopefully next week.
Oh man.
But, that's something that's definitely on the forefront of my mind right now, is getting
that's fantastic. And of course, like, keep me posted, keep us posted. And
oh yes,
and
I have a favor to ask you later. It's about the students in Haiti. So
all right, we can touch base. Let's get down to business. No, that sounds great. Thank you so much for sharing. Vanessa, do you want to go next?
Sure.
Awesome.
So I'm here in Toronto. I play trombone, as you said, in the Toronto Symphony, and I teach at the University of Toronto. And luckily this year I'm going to have a pretty big studio, which will give me some work to do. We are still going to be working at the Toronto Symphony as well, but we don't yet know exactly what we'll be doing or how much we'll be doing. It's all up in the air. Technically, we start mid-September. But I think it'll be pretty limited what we're doing, it seems like. So for me, I'm trying to start thinking about what I can do on my own to keep being expressive creatively somehow. So one thing that I'm doing is I'm organizing a brass ensemble right now, and we're hoping to do some performances in September. And the ensemble is made up of most of the members of the TSO brass section, and then members of the Canadian Opera Company and Hamilton Philharmonic, Kitchener-Waterloo Symphony, National Ballet. So a really great lineup of players, and we have a lot of music by living composers, female composers, people of color, and Canadian composers, some arrangements that I did. So it's a lot of new music that a lot of us haven't played before, so something different, and then a few traditional pieces thrown in. So that's awesome. What I've been doing a lot lately, and what sort of kept me sane during all of this COVID time is that one night we were sitting inside. My boyfriend is a French horn player, and we were sitting inside having cocktails on Zoom, and we heard some brass playing coming from outside. So we dropped our cocktails and ran down the street, and it turned out it was this little family playing on their porch, and they had decided that instead of coming out and banging pots and pans, the two high school age boys had just happened to bring home their instruments over March break. And normally, I think one of them had literally just picked up a tuba, had played trombone before, and the other one was new to the trumpet. And so their dad is an amateur trombonist. He's a playwright by trade, but also plays the trombone pretty well.
Wow.
So they wrote themselves an arrangement of a pop tune, and they decided they were going to write a new song every night. And we ended up joining them and did it for 108 consecutive nights. So so they would write a new tune every night. I wrote a few, but they did most of them.
Wow.
And all the neighbors would come out and listen. And at one point it really went pretty viral, but we insisted on reporters not giving out the street name or the address so that it stayed pretty small just for the neighborhood. And it was really cool because we had one reason to get out of our pajamas every day.
Totally.
And play our instrument every day. And we got to know a lot of our neighbors. So
that's so sweet.
It was a nice experience. And
that's so nice.
Yeah. Yeah, and before I played in Toronto, kind of just funny connection. I actually had the honor of filling Mark's shoes in San Antonio. That was my first ever job. Was I played second trombone for a year in San Antonio, and then I did a few years in St. Louis, and wound up in Toronto. Which was amazing for me because I did my undergrad in Toronto and I actually studied with Gord and studied with the bass trombone player at U of T. So it was a really amazing homecoming sort of experience and like a privilege to get to play with your former teachers and now get to be colleagues. And it took me a while to make the shift from the very, like, I think we had a pretty professional student teacher relationship, and I was always very polite, and then switching to kind of the back row humor and relaxing was a shift.
The switch was flipped, right? Yeah. One day that was it. No.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
funny.
It might have been the week of my trial when you called me to tell me to turn on the TV because there was this horror show that just happened to be on one night, and it was the plot of the horror show. It had been filmed in Toronto on the stage of Roy Thompson Hall, and in the plot, the second trombone player had been murdered by a serial killer.
What?
And the serial killer had, like, the body was left on stage with a cello neck down their throat.
And their vocal cords were the strings. That's what it was.
You have much better TV than we do.
So I had to play Russian Easter Overture the next morning, and I'm trying to get to sleep, and he's like, turn on channel 27. So anyway, sorry, I've probably gone over time.
That's such a random thing for the second trombone player.
Yeah, it was so specific. It was very ominous.
That's so odd.
It was Hannibal. It's an American show. It's Hannibal.
Right, but it was filmed in Toronto.
Oh my gosh, that's so wild. That's so funny. Jeez.
Okay, I'll turn it over.
No. But how long have you been with the orchestra now?
I think this would have been my 8th season starting. Well, it is my 8th season. We
8th
are working.
That's right.
Yeah. And Mark, what about you? Sorry, in Utah, how long have you been in Utah?
7 years.
Okay, cool.
This will be year number 8.
Awesome. Samesies. Very fun. So Harold, I think we're over to you now, if you don't mind.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. I'm playing bass trombone in the Florida Orchestra, and whenever we start up again, hopefully in October, it will be my 27th season here. And before that, I was in Honolulu Symphony for 5 years. So, been doing this a little while.
Couple years.
Yeah, I was one of those obnoxious people everyone hates that I literally won my first job the same day I graduated. So, kind of came to playing symphonic trombone sort of through a strange route. I'd really never played in orchestra much or did much listening to classical music till probably my second year of college. And I started my undergrad as a jazz major on a football scholarship. So go figure. And I'm a bass trombone player. So, you know, I guess it's all interchangeable. But been doing this a while, and you know, it's been kind of a strange year. I think the last concert we played was the end of the first week of March, and then they declared the state of emergency, closed all the halls down, and you know, just sort of figuring out what's been going on and how we're gonna try and come back from this. And I think it's, you know, probably a lot similar to, you know, what you guys are putting together elsewhere. There is we're doing a lot smaller scale works with, you know, 30, 40 musicians. You know, one good thing they did say we're doing Le Bourgeois Gentilhomme, so at least I know I'll be doing something.
You've got something to do.
Yeah, you know, fortunately our donors and our board and management has just been really positive and, you know, really supportive of everything. So unlike some of a few other orchestras that, you know, they pretty much threw in the towel for the season, you know, we're gonna try and trudge our way bravely forward here and, do the best we can and just sort of, hope for better times in the future. And, in the meantime, I've been sort of killing time the last 5 months now, just doing a lot of practicing, getting a chance to spend a lot of time working on fundamentals, which I really needed a lot of repair work on some of that. That's kind of got neglected a little over the years. And, kind of the same kind of stuff around the house too, just
The fundamentals.
taking care of a lot of just dumb stuff that you sort of leave, it's like, I'll get to it tomorrow, so that's pretty much what I've been up to, and unfortunately there's not a lot of other playing opportunities around now, because the one thing I've been really lucky with down here is just having a wide variety of performance opportunities. I get to do a lot of jazz and commercial work, and some recording work and that sort of stuff. But unfortunately, they've everything's had the plug pulled on it.
Right. It really is a bizarre
Yeah.
triangle of.
Yeah, it kind of feels like I sort of woke up in the middle of one of those bad science fiction movies on like Mystery Science Theater or something.
At least
like
it's
that.
not the movie that Gord was talking about.
Yeah, at least I don't have like a cello neck down my throat or something.
Yeah.
Things could be worse.
Yeah,
It could be a second trombone player. No.
Ouch.
I know.
Man. No, you're totally right though.
Yeah, so anyway, we're hoping to start again middle of October.
Yeah.
And then kind of trudge through all the way to the way we usually do at the end of May. And actually my teaching at the two schools I teach at, I teach at a public performing arts magnet high school.
Right.
And been doing that for a while. And also at State College of Florida. And that's both, they're both supposed to start on Monday, but we're supposed to get hit with a hurricane on Monday. So I'm not sure if we might be putting that off for a week. So
as if you haven't had it hard enough in Florida.
Yeah, it's like
2020
continues. So
man,
wow,
crazy. That's so crazy. Well, thanks for the backstory on who it is that you are. And then Gord, last but not least, if you don't mind bringing us up to speed.
Sure. So I'm principal trombone of the Toronto Symphony. I am about to start my 20th season, which to me is crazy. I can't believe that. Before that, I actually, like Harold, I actually won my first job while I was finishing up my last year of university. It was a part-time job in Victoria Symphony on the west coast of Canada. And then before I could start that job, luckily the personnel manager was very slow getting me a contract. I won a job a month later in the Winnipeg Symphony in the middle of Canada. So I spent 5 years in that orchestra before coming to Toronto.
Wow.
And yeah, so I teach at the Royal Conservatoire of Music, the Glenn Gould School there. It's a very similar kind of program to something like Curtis or Colburn, where we only take enough students to fill an orchestra. I have a maximum of 3 tenor trombones at any given time in the school. I'm the head of the chamber brass there and department head of the winds, brass, and percussion. And honestly, I think for me, I'm looking forward to getting back to teaching more than anything. There's something, a normalcy there that won't be there for the performing part of things. You know, we're all kind of wandering around in the dark blindly with our jobs coming up, not knowing how it's going to work. But I feel like, at least with teaching, you're going to show up and you're going to work with the students and you're going to have those weekly sessions, and there's going to be a plan and there's going to be a sense of schedule. And I kind of feel like once that starts up again, for a lot of musicians who do teach, there'll be this cycle that starts where you start to, like Vanessa was talking about, getting back together and playing quartets and doing these things that for whatever reason right now seem weird to get together. But I think once the cycle of teaching starts, that will start to fall into place a little bit easier as we go.
And how many students do you have at Toronto?
So University of Toronto, I'm on faculty there, but
Yeah.
over the years, I typically take a doctorate student here or there if they
Got
come
it.
through, PhD students. So I've had maybe 4 or 5 students over the 20 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So most of it's over at Glen Gould.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Vanessa, it's really interesting actually how just the balance. It's really neat how I've got this small studio that functions in a very different way than her large studio does over at the university, where she's got the trombone choir.
Right.
And the nice thing is, in recent years, we've combined forces, and Gord's made all of his trombone studio classes open to all of
that's
University
cool.
of Toronto's trombone students. And the schools are literally a 3-minute walk away from each other, just down this little path. So it's very convenient. And then all of his students come and join our trombone choir, and we've done some trips together, and it's a nice collaboration, and they get the benefits of both schools.
That's pretty remarkable, actually.
Yeah, it really is. There's really zero competition. I think the two schools are, they support each other, and there's a real sense of camaraderie between them, and wanting to learn, back and forth. So it's really terrific. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. And then for me, I think probably the summer has been busier than at the tail end of our season. I play in the Sun Valley Summer Festival. It's a festival that is, I think, the largest free festival in the world or in North America. It's all paid for by donors. And so they had this budget, and they decided to, instead of having everybody record on their iPhones and put the orchestra together, they went into these little pods. We had a large group from St. Louis, a large group from San Francisco, a large group from Houston, and we have a large group from Toronto. And so they hired video crews and recording crews, and we did a couple of brass quintet things and put that together up here. And so what they would do is broadcast it every night, like the festival was happening. They have a huge lawn with huge big screen TVs. And so they would still put on these shows, and people would come with their blankets and sit outside, and they were able to still do that while streaming it on the internet. So,
neat.
Yeah, it was really, and it just finished up last night actually, and some really interesting things that they were doing with the recording projects they had going.
And so were you guys recording that stuff? You said like in your pods, but like live with the other musicians?
Yeah. So we were in a concert hall. We had a brass quintet with a drum kit, and we spaced out, and I mean, not like spaced out, but spaced out and played. We recorded some West Side Story and some Renaissance dances and Bugler's Holiday, which is why
I know.
Yeah. And then we also recorded some orchestral stuff, Pines of Rome, Schaik 6, Beethoven 5, with just like one violin.
Yeah.
One horn, 2 trumpets, and a trumpet. It was very weird, and a timpani, So there was some really interesting stuff along with the click track, and then they later on put them together through the video editing to create some.
So neat.
Yeah.
So neat. That's very cool. Man, you guys have been busy despite COVID. All y'all.
Relatively busy.
Relatively busy.
Compared to normal, not so much.
Right, of course. Yeah. Naturally,
sure.
but
yeah.
So one thing that's definitely come up, and I'm sure you get it when you each do master classes and things, the concept and the questions surrounding auditions. This is starting to get to be a busy time for students who are going back to school, placement auditions. There are some jobs that are open, interestingly, for different roles in different places. It might just be interesting to hear a little bit about your thoughts on the audition process, or if you have any, like relatively short tips. I'm sure each of you have like your own methods and boot camps and things that you do. But for maybe even geared towards like, young professionals who are just about to do placement auditions or looking forward to prepping for an actual professional audition. Does anybody have any feedback or thoughts they'd like to share with the internet?
Sure.
Yeah, totally.
So I have 2 big pieces of advice. The first would be to record yourself constantly. Because I think that if you don't want to record yourself, and if you're not recording yourself, you're just lying to yourself. It's as simple as that. If you want to get better, you have to record yourself, and you have to listen honestly, and you have to, unfortunately, agree with what you're hearing and make changes. But for me, I would say that the biggest thing And when I talk to people who have been successful in auditions, the big thing is you have to love the process and you have to love the day. And I think that if you go into the preparation of an audition thinking it's a chore or thinking that it's something you have to do, or show up on the day thinking I can't, this sucks, then you can't be successful. But I think the people who were, checking the international musician on the first of the month and couldn't wait to put their audition book together and were creating exercises, and those are the people who,
Mark's smiling like he knows
yeah,
exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, the people who embrace the whole process. It shows when you show up on the day that you want to be there and you want to make music and you want to show people how you play this stuff. And so it's a very simple tip, but I would say if you don't love it, find a way to love it. Find a way to embrace it. Brainwash yourself into believing that you love it, whatever you have to do.
It's such an easy thing to lose sight of, though. I mean, because it can become, with the amount of repetition required to become an expert at these things, it can become mundane. So without the right perspective.
Actually, one of the best general audition tips for, whether it's school, professional, whatever, that I heard actually came from someone who's played in all of you guys' orchestras, Murray Crew. Is Murray, I go way back with Murray anyway, to when I was a student in Chicago. And Murray always said, go in there, and when you're playing the excerpt, the solo, whatever it is, play it like you're trying to convince the committee that it's the best piece of music that they've ever heard. And just play it, show them what a great composer Brahms is, or whoever it is that you're playing. Play it and just lay it out there for them as like, this is the greatest piece of music I've ever heard. And convince them of that the way you play it.
I spent a week getting lessons in masterclass with Murray at Domaine Forget, which is the summer camp up in Quebec. And he changed the way I approach music making and the way I approached auditioning in that time completely, like a 180.
Also because of a similar kind of positive stream of thought?
The thing about Murray was that his whole thing was about telling a story or creating an image. And I'd never really thought of it that way, but the way Murray talked about it, it was to an extreme. Like by the time you finished playing La Gazzaladra, you were chasing penguins through a forest on one leg. Like it was, well, how big were the penguins? What kind of trees were they? Is it uphill or downhill? The level of detail of the storytelling was so extreme that you couldn't worry about your playing anymore. You had to get so deeply into the story you were telling that, and be clear with it. That it was, it just changed absolutely everything about the way I looked at music making. So Murray's man.
For me, that person was Joan Watson, who was the former principal horn player of the Canadian Opera Company, and she taught a brass performance class. And she was big on the visualization, and that really changed auditions for me, because not only was I was already a little bit into goal setting, which she got very hardcore about, being very specific with your goals, like what is your goal? And then I would say, I want to play in a major symphony orchestra. Which major symphony orchestra? I don't know, like any that'll take me. And
I don't need to be that specific, do I?
She made me name a city, like made me be specific. Which chair do you want? And this was back years ago, like when I was a student, and one of the two that I said was Toronto. And she's the type of person that she would cut out or print out the list of people in the section and add her name to it and look at it on her fridge every day and really visualize that she had that job already. And so she would have you picture the audition day and picture it going in detail how you want the audition day to go. So from opening your eyes and feeling ready to do it, to how you feel walking to the hall, to what you have for breakfast, and then all the way through the audition to someone coming out and telling you you've won the job or you've been placed in, first chair in the orchestra, and shaking your hand and just visualizing it, not just thinking I can do it, but actually visualizing yourself winning it and then making that happen. And I think that's, I don't know, I think that's why some, for example, like principal trumpet players have that stereotype of having big egos. And I think it's because they have to convince themselves that that they can do it, because it's such a high wire act.
I think Sam just looked at her husband.
Uh-oh.
No, like
What's
if
that?
we
You were like,
if we were doing a gig together, they'd be like, no, I want to play second. No, I want to play second.
oh, okay.
But and my other piece of advice is to like make a really approachable practice plan. And how I do that is I take the list and I break it into little mini lists. So first I list all the high excerpts that are really tiring, all of the technical excerpts, all the legato excerpts, and then I make like 4 or 5 little, depending on how many excerpts you have, 4 or 5 little mini lists with one of each of those things. So you have a nice balanced list to practice every day, and you're hitting everything, instead of kind of avoiding the ones that are tiring or newer to you, and then really putting it in your calendar, like list 1 on this day, I can do 2 lists on this day. And I've been having all my students right now send me their little practice plan of the next 2 weeks, so that they have a little motivation for their practicing. Because I think especially right now, it's just so easy to be lost in a day where you have nothing on your schedule. And for me, that's almost harder to get stuff done, instead of seeing, okay, I have a 2-hour window, that's what I'm going to practice. When you have the whole day, it's easy to put it off. For me, it's easy to procrastinate and put it off and feel lost just swimming in this whole day of nothing.
The mini list thing is really interesting, and it sounds kind of similar also to something that Mike Roylance talks about with like some of his like boot camp stuff, getting into audition mode, like having envelopes and like pulling from different envelopes and things like that too, and just making sure that you're rotating and fresh through stuff. That's neat. What about you, Mark? You've had some successful auditions.
Yeah, it was great to hear what everybody said and how they think about it. I love doing these things. Yeah, I mean, the way I think about it is like when the musician, artist, and the technician taking care of everything, on the instrument, when those kind of meet each other at, the highest point, a person's kind of maybe the most marketable, and they probably get there by recording themselves, all the time. I'd say probably recording everything they're playing maybe, and listening to probably half of it or something. And so creating a compelling voice story for it as part of your artist, musician, and then as your technician, sound, rhythm, and pitch, just being, there's no kind of the same, no stone unturned. There's no kind of limit to how, how solid those can be. And then back to the musician artist, you take those things and then you tell a story with that, and you really focus, number one on the music, and then the composer, and combining those things, and maybe making your storyboard about the composer and their intentions, and that goes into learning about what you're playing, and it goes on and on. It's such a broad topic, and we're all being specific about things in a short amount of time, but yeah, I mean, having a willingness, like Gordon said, and kind of this no stone left unturned kind of mentality, that there's kind of no links that you're so motivated, you're so driven that, there's, it's just how much time do you have so you can, apply yourself and prepare. So that's kind of in a nutshell, kind of how maybe I see auditions, and that's kind of how I teach at the university and students in general, and that's kind of how I practice, honestly. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to think about it, and I think everyone has their strengths and their weaknesses, and every student, every musician is all the same, but then very different, and then how they bring their artistry to the table, and begin to think about something like taking an audition, which is such an undertaking. You'll have to cut me off. I'll just ramble on forever. I
forgot that I muted myself for a second and I start talking at you. No, this is great. And actually, you kind of bridge the gap to another question that we get a lot, and especially for this group of people, people were asking, like you said, structuring and thinking about this audition stuff, also structuring practicing as people are starting to get back into some semblance of a season or some semblance of a semester or some semblance of something. Like, how are you guys individually starting to think about, I've got stuff coming up now, like how am I going to get in gear and feel like if something came out and like a vaccine was here, you know, in 2 months and we have a big concert, like how am I going to get back? Like what's that look like for each of you?
I've been practicing every day, and this has just been a time to, I mean, in the early stages of COVID in March, I mean, you know, there was definitely some time of adjusting to, you know, this uncertainty and just being so in tuned about what was so unknown going on in the world. And, but since then, I mean, yeah, it's been really nice to, in some ways, not spread out with obligations at work, and you know I can really hone in on a lot of things we're kind of talking about right now, and that's been really great. I've just really appreciated that time, and I wonder if when this is, you know, when we're through this, hopefully soon, if we'll kind of look back at this time as, you know, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's such an enigma.
Yeah, that's interesting. And what about for others? How are you finding that you're structuring and practicing differently now because seasons might be starting, or what are you thinking?
For me, you know, right when this hit, I got down to working on issues in my playing. For like the first month, I did nothing but just slow, steady practice on that. And then I had some dental work done, and I had some time off, and I was like, this is kind of nice. And then I realized that when in our careers, in a, you know, 30, 35 year career, are you going to have time like this, guilt-free, to just either get away from it, which I did for a little while, or now what I do is just I'm just playing for fun. And so for me right now, I'm completely unstructured. I'll do 3 days of Arbin for no reason whatsoever. And then I'll do 3 days of Bordoni for no reason whatsoever. And then I'll pick out some old stuff that I always wanted to work on and work on that for a few days. And there's a freedom to it that our lives are so structured when we're on the job that for me, not having structure has been a really nice break. And I think
you're embracing that flexibility.
Absolutely. And I think everybody will handle this differently.
Right.
And I think that everyone to some degree is probably handling it correctly for them. And I think that's okay, you know?
Yeah.
I know that structure is going to have to come back into it for me, but right now I'm really enjoying not having to structure.
So is that kind of how you're thinking about working with your students too in the fall? So like,
no.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, like, for every single person, you know, the way that people deal with things is, of course, different, but also they're playing, you always tailor to a student, but now there's a whole different level of tailoring.
I mean, I think that if I was a student right now, I would have been looking at this time to work my butt off. I really think like I'm 27 years into my career. Yeah. Having a little break's not such a bad idea. But if I'm 20 years old and I know that I have to get a job in a couple of years, I probably would have been super structured during this time.
And get your butt in the shed.
And I know that not every student will, and that's okay. I'm just saying what I would have done. But I think come September, come teaching again, I think that, like Vanessa was saying, that getting back into structure is going to be really important for students as well as for me once I get going again. So,
Jim Nova says, "Well said, Gordon." So you've got Jim's.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, buddy. What about for you, Vanessa? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I had been dealing a couple years ago with a hesitation issue in my playing, and I worked through that, but then I still had sort of some residual tension issues, and no matter how much I worked on that, you still had to go in and do the job every day. So so you're doing the good work at home, but then you're put into this high stress situation, and it just, you can't help but have things creep into your playing in a high pressure situation that are like those bad habits. If you have bad habits, that's when they're going to come out. Like, so for me, this was a huge blessing in a way, because suddenly I just had all this time to do that really great nurturing maintenance work, and really work, get a lot of tension out of my playing and get back to basics, and then not have to go in at night and play tuba mirum and play whatever we were doing at work that night. So I actually feel like it's been great for my playing. I haven't gone crazy practicing, but just doing like enough on a regular basis. And then now seeing a little bit of structure coming down the road. I kind of took, like, all my students are doing their excerpts for youth orchestra and university placement auditions. So I just took those lists, and I've been approaching it as if I'm taking the audition. So kind of, I haven't prepared for an audition in years. So I'm kind of remembering what that feels like and doing the preparation as if I was taking the audition myself. And that's given me some good motivation to put all this kind of boring maintenance routine practicing that I've been doing and see what it feels like now to play those excerpts again, and playing some backyard quartets with people and playing real music again, picking a new solo that I never worked on before. And it's been really enjoyable, and like my playing feels healthier than it has in years. So that's, even though I'm, I just got back from a 3-day canoe trip, and then it sets you back a little bit, but overall it's been really healthy for my playing.
Yeah, that's so positive. And I hope as people are coming back into like their seasons or their semesters or some semblance of, moving on to the next step, that everybody can take something away from like that healthy feeling too.
And you can always reset,
Right.
like even if you haven't been super productive over the last few months, you can always start tomorrow. You can always like start with a fresh perspective and say, okay, today I'm going to make a plan and start today, and not judge how you feel if you feel you've wasted time, or if you feel like you saw somebody doing their 100 consecutive practice days on Facebook and you didn't do that. It's okay. You can start tomorrow what you want to do.
Man, you make me feel so calm. I just want to like tell you all my problems, and it's all gonna be okay.
Okay, we'll have a little chat on our own later.
Let's have a chat, yeah. What about for you, Harold?
Well, actually, a lot of the common themes I'm sort of hearing from the other three as some of the stuff I've been going through to a certain extent.
Yeah.
It is, just after years and years of, basically gig face, where you're just, lining, every week you have something and you really, spend most of your time getting ready for that, and the stuff, just regular maintenance, kind of gets shortchanged sometimes. And I had, some dental work done over the last couple of years, just getting crowns and that kind of stuff put on back teeth. And, even the best dentist in the world, your teeth are always going to shift a little bit. And so it's like all of a sudden you're dealing with kind of like a different face you're playing on. And, as much as I learned from, my teachers in Chicago is and Chris Foley and Jacobs and Kleinhammer and those guys, when I was studying with them, I'm actually tapping into some stuff that I learned from them, because they were going through a lot of that same stuff, because they were like in their 60s and 70s. And I'm not there yet, but and how they dealt with it. And I've actually spent the last couple months kind of really, stripping the structure down to the frame again. And I spent really probably a good 6-8 weeks really doing nothing but just solid fundamentals, just long tones, slow slurs, flexibility stuff, and just really trying to get everything here set and, ready to go for hopefully the next, 10, 15 years.
Right. Yeah, like you're investing in yourself. In that
yeah, just kind of like using it to just sort of rebuild and everything. And I'm starting to get, like spending time, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the the calendar method of Arbens. But basically going through Arbens, and whatever the date is, if it ends in a 0, do all the exercises in Arbens that end in 0. If the date has a 1 or an ends with 1, do all the ones at 1, 2, 3, all the way through. So that way you get through a little bit of everything in Arbens every day, and you're not doing the same stuff every day. And it's, you know, you're on like a 10-day repeat cycle. So it doesn't get stale if you're, you know, really trying to make a method.
I downloaded an app that rolled dice for me, and I would just add whatever those dice would do. But that's a better idea.
It is. That's a great idea.
Or you could just roll actual dice. But you always got to go with the fancy app.
You know, I gotta. I don't have dice.
Yeah, so you know, I've been doing that, and now that it's kind of like it's looking like we're going to do concerts again, I'm starting to, you know, put in some, you know, etudes and rochus and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But it's really been good, because in a lot of ways, some of the really basic stuff about my playing is probably back to as good, or maybe even in some ways better than it's ever been.
That's so neat.
I mean, just some of the stuff that has always been challenging for me is really starting to get a lot easier. So, you know, either I'm actually finally improving a little bit, or, you know, or I'm losing my marbles, or probably a little bit of each. But it's, yeah, so it's actually been kind of good. But that's what I've been doing. I mean, I just literally stripped the thing down to the frame and built it back up again.
Yeah. Wow. Geez, this is great. This has been so nice to like get some of your differences of opinion, but yet there's so much similarity. Another question that somebody wrote in with that I really wanted to make sure that we get to tonight is if we can talk a little bit about like each of the roles in the trombone section, because it's kind of neat. We have a nice panel of, you know, principal trombone, Vanessa's doing the second associate gig, Harold, obviously you're on bass and doing a bunch of stuff too, but like, if we could talk a little bit about what you feel is important in a section, whether that's like a working relationship or a blend or sound, and also a little bit about that, like the different stereotypical roles that people kind of have to fill their shoes in, if that makes sense. So I don't know if anybody wants to jump in on that.
I don't mind going first. I feel very fortunate that I spent 5 years playing second trombone, and then I spent 6 years playing associate second, so Vanessa's job now. And so I had the opportunity to really get an idea of what I wanted from a principal player before I became a principal player. So that was kind of nice. Whether or not those things all translate, I don't know. But
we'll ask Vanessa in a second.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, for me as principal trombone, I just feel like the big part of the job is to listen to what's going on with principal trumpet and principal horn and try to just relate that down. And so I feel like it's like holding the train together, the latch that holds everything together, because you're trying to do what they're doing, but you're still trying to lead at the same time, so that it can be a tricky thing. And I don't think I talk too much. I don't think I say much. Again, I might be wrong. I just try to come in with a clear idea of what I want and try to play it that way. And then if there's disagreements, then we talk about it. But I try to keep it as simple as I can.
Yeah. And what about like sound concept? What do you think in terms of what do you like in your section?
Again, it depends on whether or not we're with the rest of the brass section, or if we're just the trombones and the little brass on our own. I feel like we have a very good unified brass sound. Our principal trumpet is a very strong, like he plays on the more brilliant side and sits on top quite a bit. So I've been looking for, by the way, I have my new Shires cut bell, which I find actually kind of wraps around the trumpet sound a little bit better.
It's really interesting.
Really interesting. Whereas I was on yellow and I felt like it kind of got lost in that sound a little bit. And now I feel, mind you, I got it right before we went on a break, so I didn't get along to play on it. But the role changes constantly, and I don't think there's a defined role, and I don't even know if we have a defined sound. I hope that we change the way we play as a section depending on what we're playing.
Yeah, of course.
I don't think we play a certain way. I think that we make those adjustments as the composers and the styles come through.
Yeah, interesting. I actually want to go to Mark next, since he's also in a principal-ish role too. Mark, can you talk a little bit about your thoughts?
Yeah, knowing when you're leading and knowing when you're following and listening all the time. Always listening and I mean, always just having the most heightened awareness you can of what's going on around you. And in a nutshell, I think that kind of explains kind of how I think about it. A lot of things we've talked about, pitch, sound, and rhythm, all these things come into play. And I think knowing if you're following, you're listening to everything around you and you're fitting into that, and if you're leading, then you're trying to be as clear as possible. You want to have the clearest idea beforehand of what you're communicating, so that others can follow. But a combination of that, and then your knowledge of what you're playing, and knowing what whether you're supposed to be leading or following. So but yeah, it comes down to listening, and that's just something I am always working to do. Just it's never ending, and I don't think there's a limit to how much a musician can listen to whatever ensemble they're playing in. I think interesting time, this a cappella app has been this medium that's been really great to kind of try out, and it's really helpful. Duets and a few quartets here and there, but it's that's I think that's one positive thing of this time we're in is there are things like that I think that can help sharpen those tools, so when we come back everything is where it was and continuing to grow. So
neat. What about you, Vanessa? What do you think? Roles, sections, and
well, I've been so fortunate with the jobs I had, and I played 4 years of 1-year positions in San Antonio and St. Louis, and I feel like that's where I really went to school in a way. And I've had fabulous principal trombonists to play with. Gord's great. I love playing with Gord. He has one of my favorite trombone sounds of all time, and then Tim Myers in St. Louis is like one of my other all-time favorite trombone sounds, and kind of he's one of these people that nobody really knows his playing unless you have the quartet CDs from the St. Louis Trombone Quartet, but even then you don't know who's playing what all the time. Right. But he has this amazing orchestral trombone sound. I call it this little bit of grit that he gets in his sound. It's like this little sizzle that his sound is always very alive and very exciting. And Gord gets the sizzle too, but he also, even when he's really lighting it up, it has this sweet quality to his sound that I really love. And so I think as a second trombone player, especially in our section, I feel like I try to bring that sizzle or that grit in the inner voice.
Neat.
And then it just helps the upper voice pop out. And then one thing, after I'd been playing in the section for about half a year, the section did ask me to switch to a yellow brass bell, which they found helped kind of fuse my sound to the bass trombone sound a little bit better. Just a slightly bigger sound is would you say, Gord? That's kind of what you were going for?
Yeah.
So just kind of you're kind of the bridge, and especially on our stage where I think the first and the bass player can't hear each other very well, which is probably true on a lot of stages. The second trombone player's job is to be that connector and make sure that you're passing correctly. You're listening to each of them and finding the middle ground and fusing those sounds together. And I think it's true that the second trombone player does often have to play a little stronger, a little louder. And this is something I found as a teacher when I'm working on section stuff with my trombone studio class. It's always like, nope, I know you can't believe me, but you have to play louder still in that second trombone chair. And it's hard to believe how loud you have to play sometimes, but it doesn't overpower the first. It just supports the first sound, and then I think makes their job a little easier, allows them to just sort of light up and cut through without having to play too heavy. Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't switch to first as often as when I did in St. Louis, but it's definitely a huge mindset shift that you have to make. So with second, I like playing second because I find I can just relax. Gord always knows how he wants to play things, and it's just my job to almost like anticipate what he's going to do before he does it. And then when you play first, I also enjoy that because you get to be the leader. You get to have you have to have done a little bit more homework, I think, almost, and not know only how the piece goes, but know how you want to play it.
Right. Yeah, man.
Yeah. But I enjoy both roles.
Yeah. So, but primarily for you, you're typically.
Yeah, I'm primarily playing second unless Gord's away for some reason. Like I'll do a lot of the school shows and some of the pop shows.
Cool. Neat. And Harold, if you could talk a little bit, I mean, as the sole bass trombonist on our panel tonight, but yeah, I mean, like from your perspective in terms of like blend and what your role is and also what you think about for your section mates too.
Okay. Well, as far as my role, a lot of what I try and do is what was really stressed in my lessons with Ed Kleinhammer when I was in undergrad. And it was just not only playing my notes but knowing what role I was supposed to be in, because I think a lot of bass trombone players, especially when we're younger, we get into this mindset where we're doing our thing down there, and it does, everything else be damned. And but Ed was really big about knowing, are you playing third trombone here, or are you playing bass trombone? And if you're with the tuba, are you playing the middle, are you providing the core to the tuba sound, or are you playing the upper overtone to the tuba sound? And there's even times when you're not with the rest of the low brass section, and you have something else going on, and it's real easy to think you have a solo, but more often than not, you're
Bird's like laughing.
Yeah, you're reinforcing cellos and basses, or sometimes bolstering the fourth horn, or even the bassoons. And so you kind of have to change a little bit of your approach and your color depending on what role it is you're playing. And even within a trombone section is, sometimes you're the third tenor trombone, and sometimes you're the bottom voice, in the choir. So, that's what I try and do. And, as far as, what I look for in the other roles is basically, look for a first trombone player that knows what they want to do and comes in and does it. And that, to me, those are the easiest people to follow. Is, and my first orchestral, professional orchestral experience was, sitting in, and, a couple seats down from, Jay Friedman and Bud Herseth. And it's like, nary a word was ever said in rehearsal. It just was there, and you had no choice but to go with it. Just something like that, where they just have a clear concept and they just come in and do it and lay it down, and that you can just get right in their slipstream and go right along. And as far as a second trombone, someone who's just basically plays, and equivalent, you know, for lack of a better term, wingman to the first. And they're just right there, right together. And
Or wing woman.
yeah, like I said, lack of a better term. but it's, you know, someone who's just, you know, is just so tuned in to the other person, and the balance is right there, and they have a sound that just kind of fills in the pyramid between the first and you and the tuba. And, you know, fortunately, you know, I was very lucky to have, you know, found all those pieces in the last couple of years, because we literally, you know, I got to pick an entire low brass section
Right.
in an 18-month period down here. You know,
Pretty remarkable. Yeah.
new principal player, new second, and new tuba player, and
Wow.
fortunately it's just worked out great musically and personally. So
Yeah, you've got a great collection of people in that
Yeah.
group. Yeah.
I've never really heard anyone describe it that way, as playing with the overtones of the tuba.
yeah.
Like could you explain that a bit more?
Well, you know, a lot of times when you're in octaves with the tuba or something like that, and it's like they're laying down the fundamental and you're just the overtone right above it. And so it's just, you know, you're still making one sound, but it's, you know, you're just the next overtone up.
You're the glow.
Yeah.
The glow of the tuba.
Yeah. And, I mean, you know, go back and look, like, you know, if you get a chance, you know, listen to some of the old CSO. I mean, there are a lot of other players, you know, like the great bass trombone tuba combinations of like Ed Anderson and Ron Bishop, and Kleinhammer and Jacobs, and Jeff Reynolds and Roger Bobo, and those guys. They were just masters at that.
That's really neat.
Cool.
Such an interesting way to think about it, for sure, especially for a trumpet player. So
Yeah.
I feel like I'm learning so much. Well, this has been like pretty remarkable for me, and I'm so thrilled to be able to have all of you. I wanted to, if you guys are interested and would like to add anything else about what else you have going on, or things that you're looking forward to, or projects that you're working on. Or, you know, we were kind of talking a little bit about, you know, Mark, you were mentioning your upcoming project that you've been working on. If there's anything else that you guys want to bring up, I wanted to give you this opportunity too, for yourself or your studios or your orchestras. If anything, we might have covered it all, which is great too, but in case I forgot something.
I'm just wondering when our beach volleyball league is going to reopen.
Oh man,
Man.
we're yeah. For those of you who don't follow us on Facebook,
What's wrong with you?
we are on the Gustav Ballers. We're a 4-person volleyball team from the Toronto Symphony Orchestra.
And
Yeah, and we are.
you have t-shirts, I'm assuming?
We're like, yeah, we do, and
Of course.
we're like what, 4-time champions, something like that. I don't know.
That might be exaggerating, but yeah.
How many free T-shirts have we gotten?
2?
3? No, 3. We have
Okay,
3-time champions.
We'll say 3.
That's amazing.
But because of this, we haven't been able to play. And
Well,
so,
virtual volleyball isn't nearly as much fun as real volleyball.
on the plus side, I hurt less. Like my body's in less pain all the time. So that's.
It's better for your golf game.
There you go.
I know. It all comes back.
It all comes back to golf.
Man. Well, I will, for all of you who are going to be working on stuff, of course, we'd love to share your projects and what you're doing with your studios and what you're doing with the orchestra on Facebook and stuff for everybody to watch. But I can't thank you all enough for being a part of this, and so nice to get to see you, get to hear from you, and pick your brain a little bit. And thanks to everybody who has been tuning in and watching, and will watch this video later on. We've had a total blast with these Shires TV episodes. I say we because it's not just me sitting here in my house doing these on Thursday nights. It is like a more collective effort in thinking about these and trying to plan interesting topics and reaching out to our wonderful and amazing artists. So I think we're going to have another one next week, and then I think we're going to taper off a little bit. I've been saying that every week, but we're going to continue to move forward with more virtual and online events and stuff with, you know, more masterclasses, like in the virtual and, you know, traditional sense. but then other interesting little, tips and tricks from our factory and some of our crafts people who are busy building the horns, because that's a lot of fun too. But thank you to each of you for being a part of this on the panel tonight. It was a blast for me. So
Thank you. This
Nice
is
to talk
fun.
to all of you.
Yeah.
it's awesome.
It was
All right,
great
and
to meet Harold and Mark as well. We haven't
Yeah.
met you before. I haven't met you before.
that's another nice thing, just bringing it together. Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for watching and for being a part of this, and we'll see you in the future. Hopefully in person, but if not, I'm sure everybody will keep in touch. So awesome. All right.
Thank you.
Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.